The Plotcast Podcast with the Potty Plotters.
Right, well, here we go. Hello.
Hello. How are you?
Yes, I'm Elaine.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
And I'm Julia.
You had to think about that, though, didn't you?
It's been one of those.
I don't think she had to think about it particularly. I think she was looking at the script going, do I do that bit here, or shall I wait until she's done the hello and welcome back to the Potty Plotters Plotcast podcast? This is season 3, episode 7.
That's nice, Gareth. Thank you and welcome. This week we're going to be talking about S4 salad.
Salad?
Yeah, I could think of lots of other words to go there.
We can't say those on this.
We probably could say some of them.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I like salad, though. I love salad, it's fair to say. So we're going to help people think about growing it because it's so simple to do.
And it's so cheap to do, and it's so much better when you grow your own.
Oh, it is.
It is, yeah. But I will say that I'm just flabbergasted, really, that so many people keep going to garden centres. I'm not doing them down. But why go to the garden centre to buy a tray of lettuce when, if you buy a packet, which costs about 99p, depends on your variety, you can grow trays and trays and trays of the stuff, can't you?
You can. I've got.
I think it's people. It's probably like me. It's people that doubt their own ability. And we were talking briefly before we hit the record button that on my little post-it note of requirements.
Yeah, that you stuck in the shed.
I didn't stick it in the shed. I gave it to Julia, who then stuck it in the shed.
Oh, she stuck it in the shed.
Yeah. So it's got a list of things that I'd like to grow this year. Obviously, excluding the things that didn't work for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And you kind of sit there going, well, there's some on here. And I said, well, the tomatoes, we'll do the ones that you've already started.
Done.
But there's a variety that comes out later in the year. And I'll experiment with that one and start it off. And
tell you what, that'll be worth watching.
The look of the shock of horror on both of your faces was, I might take a picture of it.
Yeah, we've done it enough times, so you should be able to follow the method, Gareth.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that's the thing. It's the fear of getting it wrong, and actually, you know, there are some very basic rules to follow.
Yeah,
and really,
with everything that we grow.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's it then.
Yeah. Shall I tell people how to get in touch?
Go on then.
So if you've got a question and you'd like us to answer it, then you can get in touch via Facebook and Instagram at Potty Plotters. You can email us naughtycorner@pottyplotters.uk or check out the website pottyplotters.uk. And if you'd like to leave us a tip in monetary terms to keep us in tea and coffee and milk and things like that, and
Easter eggs, Gareth.
Yeah, well, this is Good Friday when we're recording this, so typically for a bank holiday it's not fantastic outside. It's a bit windy, which you've just set a fire, so I mean this could be disastrous for everybody, but it was predicted at one point to be quite nice and it's gone to middle, I'd say.
Well, I'm not going to complain, Gareth, because we have had glorious weather for weeks and weeks. In fact, I did actually say the D word earlier on, that we may actually be facing a drought this summer because we've not had any rain for weeks and weeks, and whilst, you know, I love this dry warmer weather, it's actually a little bit concerning now because when you go into the wells on site you can see that they are quite low down, and if this is the way that we're heading, anyway, I don't want to talk about the weather, but I am enjoying this weather, but it could almost trick us, couldn't it, Elaine?
It could, but you know what we're like in this country, it could turn on the flick of a switch and then before you know it we're underwater again.
Yes. So
make the most of the nice days, I would say.
But getting back to the quiz, if you'd like to leave us a tip, you can go to ko-fi.com/thepottyplotters. That's ko-fi.com/thepottyplotters, and we might use it to buy some cocoa beans, which you can use then to grow chocolate, but not in this country.
No.
We're not doing that this week.
No, not this week. I mean, I don't know how you'd start those off anyway.
The Plotcast Podcast with the Potty Plotters.
Anyway, on the list of things to talk about, somebody slipped in garlic.
Yeah, well, it won't be.
Well, it was me, because if you remember back at the end, towards the end of last season, we spoke about setting garlic.
Yes.
Which I did.
Yes.
And they sprouted.
Yeah.
And you said to me at the time, just put it in, don't do anything with it because it will just set off. But obviously we've been talking about how dry it's been recently, and I just wondered, for anybody that followed what we were doing do we need to look at watering them now? Because you said at the time, don't put any water on them because they don't need it, but now it looks quite barren.
Yeah, I would definitely water it because it needs it, and all bulbs need it. So if you've got your spring bulbs and the lasagna that you did,
they look, they are pretty.
There you go. Aww. So all you need to do is water them intermittent. The difficulty I've got, Gareth, is holding people back from watering all the time. You don't need to water all the time, just probably once a week, if that. But when I say that, I don't mean soaked. I just mean just a sprinkling over, and that will do it. That's fine. It's a bulb underneath, don't forget, and bulbs are tending to rot where the rain is.
So we're now in the end of April. We planted the garlic, I'm trying to think when it was now.
About October time.
So when should I be looking at it being ready for me to start pulling up?
I hope you're not in a hurry. It's July.
It's not that far away.
No.
It's only a couple of months away.
Yeah, don't wish the year away already. And it's funny that Gareth has brought up the topic of garlic, because we've also had a garlic incident this week, haven't we? Because we went out to do a talk, and we won't say anywhere where it was, but they had
Transylvania.
But they had a raffle, and one of the prizes in the raffle was somebody had dug up some wild garlic for people to then take away and plant themselves. Now, we were a little bit horrified at this, not because we don't like wild garlic.
Wild garlic's much nicer, isn't it? Because it's a softer flavour anyway. It's not as aggressive.
But we did actually have to intervene. To the lady who won it, we intervened very quickly and dragged her to one side. And what did we say, Elaine?
Well, she wanted to know what you can do with it, so I explained.
So you told her where she could put it, didn't you?
No, at this time of year, it's perfect because your flowers on the wild garlic should be in bud. You can use those as little garlic flowers. You can put them on your salads, etc., and they look lovely. And you can also munch up the leaves and crush them all up, put some oil, etc., with them, and make a pesto. And it really is scrumptious. But, and it is a big but, it is wild by name and wild by nature. It will take over your garden. It will take over any area that it can quickly spread to. It's worse than mint. So, as we said to this lady, if you've got a pot, put it in the pot. It was in a little 4-inch pot, but realistically just put it in a big pot and leave it in that, and then you can still take the leaves, etc.
So we've walked around in different places and you see wild garlic basically almost feels
exactly.
It's
and
like
there's a reason
carpet.
for it. Yeah.
Would you say, I mean, you compared it to mint, would you say it's probably one of the worst things for taking over in your garden?
Yes.
So worse than rhubarb, for example?
Oh no, we love rhubarb.
I know you love rhubarb,
but rhubarb won't take over.
No, it won't take over, no. Can dig it up as well.
Yeah, I mean, rhubarb will keep on growing, but of course you can thin that out and eventually you can get rid of it, but wild garlic.
And it just completely runs, and it forms like a mat just a few inches underneath the soil. Gareth, never ever put it in your garden. Never. That's that. That was a never.
A never.
Yeah, don't.
Okay.
Hints and tips for shortcuts to success. The Potty Plotters Plotcast.
Okay then, now then, let's talk about tomatoes then, shall we? Now then, let's first of all think about what kind of tomatoes there are, and then where people go wrong. And then that will help you, Gareth.
Yes.
Yeah,
So you've got your big ones, your beef masters.
Yeah.
You've got your little pot ones like your red robins, which you can do on your windowsill, and then you've got the vine tomatoes.
Yeah.
And you've got the bush tomatoes.
Right, they're sort of all the same.
They are.
We'll come back to it.
Yeah, and I can't remember what the other one is that isn't the bush variety.
Well, you've done very well there, actually.
Yeah.
So we'll start off then with the beef masters that you explained.
Yeah.
They're cordon, and they're called
That's
cordon
the word I was looking for.
because
James
they grow
Corden.
up. They grow up and always need support.
Yeah, and you might actually see that on a seed packet, and it might say indeterminate. So
that's the other word,
cordon
isn't it?
Indeterminate means
I know how it feels.
they're the ones that basically travel upwards, and you need to be pinching out the side shoots, and usually you get a leaf, and then you get a truss with the flowers, which then develop the fruit. And what happens is that will develop over a period of time, so you're not getting all your tomatoes all at once. They are kind of, you're waiting for each each truss to develop, so you're getting them over an extended period.
And you mean generally we put them in the greenhouse, the polytunnel, but there are varieties that you can grow outside as well?
There are, but I tend to think of the ones that you grow outside as more the determinate ones, but some people do, and that's something to look on the seed packet or the label to see whether it is suitable for outside. If you are growing one that's outside, what I would say is check for one that says blight resistant, because that is the biggest problem with tomatoes grown outside, particularly on an allotment site where blight can literally take hold very quickly, and it affects potatoes, it affects tomatoes, and it really will just kill them in a foul sweep. So if you can find one that's blight resistant, that's even better. And also, if you are growing any outside, what I would say is that the one thing they really don't like is a lot of wind.
Who does?
No.
Now then, moving forward, you actually mentioned, Gareth, a bush variety. Mm-hmm. Now, a bush variety is a completely different kettle of fish. It's not a kettle of fish, I don't know why I even said it.
No, it's a bush.
What is it then, Julia?
So a bush variety, otherwise known as, now you might see this on a seed packet or again on the label, and that would be classed as determinate. So that means they grow like a bush, and like any bush that you would grow. And what I would say is they do require some level of support, but not like the ones that you put on your window, and not like the ones that travel up the vine. But what I would say is almost something like a peony support, almost as it's growing, something to support as it's growing. But what will happen is that tends to fruit over a shorter period of time, and it seems to come more all together. So there's no pinching out, there's nothing to worry about in terms of pinching out, but you need to think about giving them enough room to grow, so a decent sized pot that they grow in. And generally the bush varieties are the cherry tomatoes. You don't see them as a big salad tomato.
Okay, and then you mentioned as well the little tomatoes. Mm-hmm. Those little tomatoes are dwarf variety, and there are lots of different dwarf varieties. We've tried 2 different ones. Red Robin, that's my favourite, but also we did balcony red last year, where we stuffed them in our bras, if you recall.
I do.
Not while we were wearing them, no. Okay.
Painful.
Yes, not very pleasant.
I'm glad you cleared that up, yeah.
Otherwise she'd have been clearing something else up.
But the good thing about the dwarf variety, which I really like, the Red Robin, is that they only grow about 8 to 10 inches. There's no pinching out, there's no staking required, and they grow as a house plant on the windowsill. That's how simple they are, and they will give you weeks and weeks of little tiny red cherry tomatoes. They do need the light, they don't necessarily need the sunlight. So another thing, don't put them outside, they prefer to be inside. So that's another variety, but all of them come in seed packets. So think about the variety that you want to grow, specific to the conditions that you've got at your house. And then what do we do? How do we put all this together, Julia?
Well, I'll just refer backwards, because you say they came in seed packets. Well, we talked about doing the sliced tomatoes on the compost. And I'll just say that I would always expect those to be a indeterminate, a cordon variety, because since they are being produced by commercial sellers, I think that's generally what they would be. So that's what I would treat them as. But then once you've got them growing, and now if
wait a minute, then let's go back over it. So how do we actually set tomato seeds? Because I think this is where a lot of people go wrong.
Well, this is going now when this episode goes out, it is getting very late for setting seeds. But for next year, what I would do is you need enough compost in your container, and you put, depending on how many seeds you're planting, will really determine the container. So I use like a standard size 7 centimetre 3-inch pot, and I use that. If I'd say only got about 6 seeds in a packet and I wanted to set that, I would set all 6 seeds in that plant pot all at once. And all you do, make sure there's sufficient compost, so a good couple of inches, because of course they need to develop the roots. And then pop the compost in the container, then lay the seeds on the top, and then what is really important, you only put a very thin smattering of compost on the top, and that's where we've seen loads of people make mistakes recently. And then what you need to do is just wet the compost from the bottom, so we just pop it into a little bath, let the moisture take it up, and then you need to put some kind of cover on it. So whether you put a clear plastic bag, whether you put cling film on it, or whether you put it in a propagator with a lid on it, it needs to be in those conditions, and it needs to be quite warm to get them going. So about 18, 20 degrees probably around ideal conditions. And then this is really important, and this is where we've seen a few people make mistakes as well. As soon as the tomato seedlings start to emerge, take that lid off. Take that top off, because what happens is the moisture is building up in the propagator or whatever, and then that drips the moisture onto the plant and it rots it. That is damping off, and of course then there's no recovering.
Because we saw
that.
Barry, didn't we, last week? Barry over the other side.
Yeah.
Is that Barry Bananas?
Yes,
Barry Bananas.
That's him.
Okay.
And he came over and he said, "Oh, what have I done wrong?" Well, actually, I've said that I'll do a private lesson. Because his were absolutely, well, there were nothing, were they? There was nothing.
So if we take a step back, we've talked about doing the sliced tomatoes many times, and I think that's, if you find a tomato you really like in the shops, that's a really good way, because a lot of the seeds you won't be able to find certain varieties. So the one that we talk about the most is the ones that I like, the little Italian ones, and we've spoken about my weird shaped ones, which we'll do later in the season. So we've done those as sliced ones because you can't get hold of the seeds, because you don't necessarily know the exact variety.
No.
But if I was to do those in a similar style, I've bought you several times when we've bought those little muffins, little tiny muffins,
they are perfect.
where you get the like the 16 or whatever in the tub with the closing lid. So I could in effect put the pot inside that and treat that as the propagator.
We've got one in the tangerinery that I did earlier. I took 3 slices of a salad tomato, and they're about 4 inches high now, aren't they? And that was in your chocolate muffin container.
So did you use the container with the compost in, or did you put the pot inside that?
I had about, which I could go and get, but there's about 2 inches of multi-purpose compost, and then all I've done is put 3 slices of tomato on the top, and then just literally covered it, no loading of it, just a smattering on the top. You don't need to water it at all, because the moisture from the flesh of the tomato will keep it going. And then I clipped the lid of the chocolate muffin case, and that made a mini greenhouse.
That's what I was getting at.
I left it, and honestly, within a week they started to sprout. 9 days they were on the way.
So I need to eat more muffins, is where I'm going with it.
Well, I mean, we did talk about you and said thank goodness he eats as many as he does.
So once you've got your tomato seeds started, Elaine, and you allow them to grow on a little bit, so imagine my plant pot with about 6 or 7 in, I allow them to grow on. They obviously produce their baby leaves, which look nothing like a tomato leaf, and then they develop their true leaves, which are very noticeably tomato-y shape. You can tell, and they are very different to the original. At that point, that is when I would start thinking about pricking out and potting it on into its own container.
That's right. And the main thing that you need now is a metal spoon, because if you've put quite a lot of these seedlings all together, you need to get the metal spoon underneath to oof it all out. And then what we do is we put it on the top, don't we, as a clump of tomatoes, and then very carefully split the tomatoes from the roots underneath from each other. And then what you do is you turn the spoon round the other way, with the handle make a hole in the compost that Julia was just talking about, an individual pot of about 3 inches, and then drop the seedling right the way down. Now, it sounds brutal, but not a lot of people do this. Drop that seedling all the way down to the bottom. So I've made a hole right the way down to the bottom, and then you will only have the green bits, the leaves on the top.
This is because the stalk is hairy and actually is more roots, and it allows it to create its own root pattern.
That's right, and a much stronger plant is the result that you'll get.
Now
it is worth doing.
You need to keep it moist, but not overly wet. No, that's another mistake that we see people. So again, wet it from the bottom,
definitely,
rather than overhead. And you'll be able to tell actually whether things need needing watering by the weight of the plant pot. And it's something that you learn with experience by lifting the plant pots, whether they need any more moisture or anything in there. But you don't want to saturate them. I mean, I would say that we're probably giving the tomatoes that we've got water probably every 5 or 6 days at the moment in these conditions. And of course, the bigger the plant grows, the more moisture it needs and the more watering therefore it needs. And then what do we do with it then, Elaine?
Sorry. You know, I'm laughing because I've been looking after Kev's plants. Kev's got
Oh, there's a surprise.
He's gone on holiday. And,
already?
Yeah, he's cleared off to Wales. Now, the reason that I'm laughing, he asked me if I'd look after his plants, and he brought them very kindly and put them on my plot. So I oofed them all into my greenhouse. Now then, he actually hasn't got anybody else to blame. But you know when you accuse somebody, no, you just say, now then, and it was a bit, what have you been doing here, Kev? And he looked, he said, why, what? And I said, well, it looks like you've been watering from above like that, said I, in an accusing sort of way.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, it's not me. It's nobody else. You are the sole person looking after these. The reason that you never water from above is because when you've got a lot of sunshine, the sun will burn those leaves where every droplet is. And I could tell because you'd end up with little white blobs on the leaves. So you know that he's been doing it. But honestly, it did make me laugh.
So all the time up until they're ready to sort of be planted into their final destination, you're basically keeping them in a bath of water so it can draw the water that it needs.
But never leave them sitting in the bath.
No.
Because it'll get, it's a bit like us, you see, it'll go
shriveled up.
You go pink and crinkly. And you... if you can give them warm water, that's lovely. So warm water by leaving your watering can with the water in your greenhouse will warm it up. It's only a little bit, but it makes a big difference. And never ever go to bed with a wet bottom. I'm just saying that, Gareth.
No, you don't need to.
You need to water in the morning where you can, not at night. So there's so many hints and tips. I think the whole thing was dead good brilliant.
Yes, it was dead good brilliant, and we can talk about it later on in the season. But the other thing that people kind of get confused about is feeding their tomato plants.
Yes, they do.
Now, one thing you don't do is start feeding straight away at baby stage. You wait until the first truss develops with the flowers on. And it's at that point you can start to give the plant some tomato feed. And you give the tomato feed, there's so many different types on the market. And all that does is help the fruit develop, swell and set. So that's why we feed them. But we can talk about that later.
Later on in the season. But let's get everybody. Let them get going, and it will be a good test if you can do it, Gareth. But the main thing for me is the amount of people who say I just can't grow tomatoes, and it's because they've planted the seeds too deep. They can't find the way. They're only little tiny weeny things.
Just going back to
you've
tomatoes.
Got to think about the seeds that are actually within the tomato itself. They're only small. It's not like you're being presented with a huge seed on it. So
no. Just going back to tomatoes, I know we were going to move on to cucumbers, but it's just something I thought of. So most people listening to this now will not be sowing the seed because it's getting a bit late. They'll have been given, or they'll go out and buy the tomato plant. Now in the garden centres, that's much easier. If you go to a plant sale, don't have something that people don't know what it is. Because
you mean the word tomato?
because
I'd say from the look of the plant, that's obvious.
Yeah, but then you don't know what you're getting. And a few of our friends on site were very kindly given some tomato plants by another lady on site, and they really didn't know what it was, and they all ended up with black tomatoes. Now, that wasn't a problem, it wasn't a condition that it was, but they were black tomatoes, and they really didn't know what to do with them. So what I would say is, unless you want to have a go at potluck, get a named variety so that you understand what it needs.
I think basically what we've said before, which is find something you want to eat, because it's difficult because you go to the garden centres and supermarkets as well now stocking seeds, and there's so many varieties of the same one, and you don't really know what it tastes like. because I don't really like the true cherry tomatoes. I find them quite bitter, but actually the plum tomatoes I really like.
Yeah.
And I'd rather grow those and have something that I'm going to eat, as opposed to here's some cherry tomatoes and me go, oh great, here we go again.
Yeah.
So actually finding something that you like and doing it the way that you've suggested with doing the slices.
Slices, dead easy.
It means that you know what you're going to get out of it. And actually, if you've already tasted them, you know you're going to like them.
And cherry tomatoes, of course, don't take as long to grow, so go for it.
Contact the Potty Plotters anytime on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram at Potty Plotters, or email naughtycorner@pottyplotters.uk.
Right then, well, cucumbers.
Yes.
Well, I've already talked about cucumbers to lots of different people, Julia, and it's fair to say that you're doing a little experiment yourself, aren't you, this year?
I am, yeah, because I saw these seeds come up on the sale when I was looking and online, and they were for a very dwarf cucumber, and the cucumber itself is called Quick Snack, and they grow to about 24 inches, so not very big, and they're meant to produce a cucumber about 5 or 6 centimetres, but quite a few of them. So I am having a go with these because apparently they don't need any pollinators. You can grow them in your conservatory. So I thought, to go along with your dwarf tomatoes, we could grow
dwarf salad.
the dwarf cucumbers. But of course, that's not going to suffice for me because I like lots of cucumbers.
I do.
So whilst you like the big ones, I tend to go for the smaller ones, although I have.
Telegraph improved.
Yes, and also Carmen as well. Yeah, going for the pear this year.
Yeah.
Ooh,
the Carmen we took out on tour with us last year, didn't we?
Did she have a rider?
Yeah, well, it did get quite a big one, didn't it? It was about 19 inches. Yeah, and Carmen is one of the ones that they do grow for showing, isn't it?
Yeah, exhibition. So, right then, so if you wanted to start off with a cucumber then, Julia, how do you do that?
Well, you pick the type that you want. So do you want a shorter one, or do you want a big long one?
Or an outdoor variety? There's outdoor as well, Ridge.
Yeah, you can grow them outdoor. What you tend to find with the outdoor varieties is that the skins are a lot tougher.
They are.
And of course they do need male and female pollination generally. Whereas the indoor varieties, they have a smooth skin, and most of them, especially the more you pay for your seeds, they're generally F1 varieties, and they're female flowers only.
Yeah.
And that means that you don't need pollination in there. So,
So we'll come on to that later in the season. But to get these going then, how do people grow a cucumber?
Oh, cucumbers are very easy to grow. So again, get yourself a pot of multi-purpose compost, a 3-inch pot, or we get cells of 6. Cell trays with 6 spaces in, and most of the F1 varieties you only get about 4 or 5 seeds anyway.
Yeah, you do.
And then what we do, we set the seeds, so we pop them on their side. So instead of on their back, imagine rolling onto your side. That's the thinner version rather than lying on your back, which would be the big flat version. And you pop it on its side, and of course you plant it twice the depth of the seed. So
again, it's only a smattering because a cucumber seed is very tiny, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's a cucumber seed. It's about 0.5 centimetre. So you'd only put about 1 centimetre on the top.
Yeah.
So it really isn't that much. Again, we water from the bottom, and again you need to cover them over
and keep them warm.
Keep them warm. Yeah.
Get them germinating
until they get going.
Yeah. And again, what we'll do is we'll talk about how to transplant them out of whatever it is that you've got them growing in at the moment into the greenhouse, the polytunnel, or, as you can, put them into big pots. You can put them into big pots even though you're going to grow them into the polytunnel or the greenhouse, can't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, very successful.
Top-notch advice, no Latin included. The Potty Plotters Plotcast.
You've got a brilliant bit, haven't you? A brilliant bit.
Well, yeah, only because it's relevant to what we're doing now. Oh. And I remember going out, I think it was this week, that's what I was just thinking about, when we went, and there was a lady on the front row, and she was mesmerised by what we were talking about, which was, if you've got pop socks, chop them up going across the foot sort of thing.
Into slivers.
Yeah. And then using those as your ties for your cucumbers, tomatoes and sunflowers. Well, she was absolutely gobsmacked, wasn't she, as to why you would do that, and then said that's the first thing that she's going to do this week.
Ooh, because
she'd not thought of it. Yeah. But you know, to do one pop sock, you will get enough slithers out of that to keep all of those going, all of your sunflowers, tomatoes, cucumbers and so on. And the good thing is that because they're so nylon and elasticy,
stretchy,
that's it. I'm doing it like that now, aren't I? So because they're so stretchy, they don't cut into the stalks of the plants themselves. What they do is they grow with it. So it is a better and cheaper way of working, isn't it? Get your
what
pop
denier
socks
would
out.
you use?
Oh, I think a 15 would be all right. You want some strength in it.
I have no idea what you're going on about.
Dead good brilliant bits. The Potty Plotters Plotcast.
Melons. We have had such a laugh about all of these, haven't we?
Yeah.
Which of course are related to cucumbers.
Absolutely.
Yes,
I tell
they
you what,
are.
Gareth,
It's
you
like
do
you
listen.
Yeah. We like grown melons. Well, I like grown melons, and I grow them because you can. Because a lot of people think you can't grow them in this country, and you can. And it is.
Is there any certain melons that work in this country?
Yeah, I mean, the shops will, the garden centres and the seed suppliers will now only really sell the type that are suitable for our
which is
conditions.
good, isn't it?
Yeah, because of course you've got to remember that we do have those colder periods.
Yeah.
So generally, if you've got a glass house or if you've got a polytunnel, that's the best way to grow them. Some people grow them in cold frames, in like hotbeds in cold frames.
Yeah.
But I think our weather's so unpredictable.
It's a bit tricky, that's the thing, isn't it?
Exactly. So, you know, like Gareth said, so just like a cucumber, treat them just like a cucumber. They like the same conditions. You plant them in exactly the same way as you do your cucumber. And they need something to climb up, ideally. And then you support them as they are growing. And as I said, I've used my bags from the oranges.
Yeah, oranges, tangerines, lemons, limes, all of those nets.
Yeah, and I use those to support them once they start to develop on the plant. But they like the conditions that a cucumber does, which are humid conditions. So, you know, whilst the heat gets up in your greenhouse, if it isn't very humid in there, you could water your path to bring the humidity levels up. So that's what I do with them. But, they're very easy to grow.
Okay, so how do you grow them then? How do you start them off?
Oh, well, just like a cucumber, plant them exactly the same. And the seeds look very like a cucumber.
So importantly, then label them, because otherwise we could get a melon and it isn't. It's a cucumber and vice versa.
Yeah, I mean, there are certain schools that say you should pinch them out after you get 5 sets of leaves, and then once you pinch them out, once the fruit starts to develop, pinch out the next leaf after that, which you can do. And I do that now generally, but if I miss it, it doesn't matter, they still grow.
So for a novice, never had it done before, never had a go before, just stick it in and hope for the best.
I mean, you know, you're going to get smaller melons, but it doesn't really matter, does it?
What's your yield like in comparison to, say, a cucumber that... I mean, the cucumbers we did last year, we got quite a lot off them.
Yeah, I mean, cucumbers, the Carmen, you can get between 50 and 100 cucumbers off them.
I'm going into business.
Whereas, you know, melons, probably you're lucky if you get 5 or 6.
Yeah.
But, you know, it is worth it. The flavour of them and having them warm off the plant. And the reason that I support them while they're growing in the nets is because I want them to develop that flavour. I want them to swell on the plant. I want them to ripen on the plant. And of course, you know that they're ripe by the smell of them. That's when that's how you tell whether they're ready or not, is by the smell.
I remember you once saying that it was the melony smell.
Yes.
Melony.
I didn't know that melonies did, but there you go.
Yeah.
Some do. It depends if she's deodorised or not.
The Plotcast Podcast with the Potty Plotters.
Okay then, so now that I wanted to talk about salad onions as well.
Good.
There was a lady the other day who, again, when we were out and about doing our talk, saying that she was struggling to grow salad onions.
I struggled with them the other year, and I can't remember I think we spoke about the conditions to do them in, and I just think that it just didn't work.
They are quite tricky. That's the irony.
So small,
yeah.
You'd
You would
them to
think
be quite
they'd be dead
easy.
easy.
You'd expect the really big onions to be the tricky ones, and actually it's the smaller ones that are the tricky ones.
Salad onions can be really tricky. And then I remember going somewhere else, and this chap said to me, what you need to do is start them off in a gutter. Well, of course I start peas off often in a gutter, and he said just do these. So I use white Lisbon, that's the variety that I use, and I thought, well, I'll give it a go, and ever since then I've never looked back. So you have a small piece of gutter, put multi-purpose compost on the top, make sure that there's some holes underneath the drainage, but don't worry too much because you're not going to soak
You've got a big hole at the
everything.
end anyway.
Yes, very much so, and then everything slides out. And all you do is you literally just sprinkle some seeds on the top, and that's how I've done it. Then literally cover with a smattering of compost on top, and then leave it somewhere warm. And I tell you what, never failed.
That's interesting because Jerry, who's plot behind me, he grows a lot of spring onions, and he's always really successful with them. And I'll tell you what he does. So he's got his raised beds, and with the soil in, and what he does is he lays a layer of compost on the soil.
Yes.
And then he sows the seeds,
on the top,
and then he puts another thin smattering.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking a lot of compost.
No,
we're not
it's
talking
only
inches.
a tiny bit.
It's a smattering of compost, and he always has success with
It's
them.
that they don't like having to fight in soil.
Yeah.
They like a really fine breadcrumby fine tilth.
Yeah.
That's what they like. So by putting it in multi-purpose compost and it's in a gutter, they can get the seeds going. The roots become established, and that's when I slide them out and just put them as a row in the allotment.
I mean, I've seen Charles Dowding actually do the multi-sown spring onions in the cell trays.
Yeah.
So I might have a go at doing that
would
because
work.
that would work. Because this year I have, instead of doing my onions from sets, I'm doing some from seeds that I've grown.
Yeah.
And they are quite happy, and they're quite happy in the very tiny cells.
Yeah.
So I think I might have a go at the mini multi-sows.
Well, you have a go at that, and I'll have a go on the gutter, and then just hope that you like them, Gareth.
Do they need a lot of watering, Elaine?
No.
So once they've
not
got
at all.
going,
Once I've got going, I just leave them in the allotment. That's it.
But
if they do like a sandy condition because it's
That's
for
what
drainage.
That's what I did. I tried them in a pot with a mix of soil, compost and sand.
I know. Yeah.
And it just they sprouted, but they were pathetic.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what it is, Gareth. It's that things like that need what's called soil structure, and it means that they're sort of all fluffy and they haven't got to fight or they haven't got to do anything. What they need is that structure for them to start to grow into, and if all they've got is that multi-purpose compost, they don't have to fight, and they become all I was going to say
lazy.
Limp and boring, but these will get established, so do it like this instead.
Right. So if we don't have any rain, for example, would you water them once a week?
I would sprinkle them.
Right.
Yeah, that's all.
You
Nothing
wouldn't
else.
puddle them or anything?
No, because it's a bulb and they don't want to be sitting. Onions don't like to be sitting in water at all. So if you've got a sandy area, that's the best thing to actually put them in. They don't need loads of nutrients. And they're not in the ground that long if you think about it.
Now, lettuces you've got written.
Yeah. Right. Well, I think there's so many varieties of lettuce, and what's made me smile this week has been when we've taken our lettuces out. I've just set a new tray, by the way, but I'll talk about that in a minute. But it's when people ooh and ah when we take stuff out of the bags. It's like a magician's act now. So when we talk about something, we take it out, and the two things that we took were lettuces in colanders, which were the interred, which look magnificent. They don't need a lot of sunshine, they just need to get set, and once they're off, they're off.
Yeah, and the interred are basically a small lettuce. They are little gem type lettuces, and they taste very little gem type. But what I've found with them as well, because they are red, the birds are less interested in them.
Exactly, yeah. And they look beautiful. I will say, Gareth, that so we've actually put them in a colander. Let's carry on with the story. We put them in a colander. Because colanders are brilliant for growing lettuces in. They've got holes in, there's drainage holes, they let the light through, and generally speaking, we found that lettuce are happy growing in them. You can then lift the colander off the ground so that they never get any slug damage, which is brilliant. Now then, what I did the other day when I took them back out before I brought them back up here, I put them on the steps at home, so we've got steps going up to the front door, and the dark red, because that's the colour of the leaves, against the white and pale green door look blooming lovely. And I thought, that is what people need to be planting. Instead of doing bedding plants and all the rest of it, why don't we do veggies instead?
Lettuce plants on your
they're
doorstep.
Gorgeous.
Yeah. Just go and take a leaf when you need it.
Yeah.
Very
Well, why
good.
not?
Yeah.
So that's one example into red, and all we did there was we put multi-purpose compost into a colander, wet it. That was important. So we wet it with the rose on the watering can, so that the water went through, and then we sprinkle the leaves, the seeds on the top, and then just a little light sprinkling again of multi-purpose compost on the top, and then leave it and watch what happens. And they shoot in no time, don't they?
Yeah.
But then you can thin them out if you want, or if you don't want to, cut and come again, for instance.
Yes.
You did a lovely one, Julia.
Yeah, I mean, cut and come again are very easy. So if you've not got a growing space outside, you can grow them on your windowsill, and they are literally, they're sold as cut and come again, or leaves, salad leaves, and basically just get yourself a pot, whether it's a fruit container or something.
So an old see-through one that had grapes or tangerines or whatever in. Yeah.
If they you need holes in the bottom of the container, so be conscious about obviously putting them on your windowsill.
Yeah.
But just sprinkle the seeds, and you literally just let them grow. So again, multi-purpose compost on a little bit on the top of the seeds, give them a water, keep them watered from below, and you'll get loads of leaves. And what happens then is you just cut them when you want them, and they'll regrow, Elaine.
So doing the coloured ones stops the birds from bothering, but to be quite honest, I've never had birds bother my lettuces. No,
it's been slugs, hasn't it?
No, it's always slugs, the little black ones. But what I'm conscious of this year is where we've put our Nema slugs. So hopefully we won't have any damage this year. But they look beautiful. But lift them, that's what I would say, definitely. Put them into containers. Have a one-pot lettuce. When all's said and done, you don't eat that much, and why keep them runny in the bottom of your fridge?
No, it's horrible.
But they do,
I know.
Are we had enough now?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's actually getting a bit of breeze up. My door's squeaking.
It is. It's been
You need some
interesting.
WD-40 on that.
Oh, I'll get it.
That's something we're not short of, is it? WD-40.
No, we've got plenty of that. In fact, I used it the other day, didn't I?
Oh, Gareth, you wait till we've built it. But now you've seen my extended chip shop. Elaine has now bought a mini Sentry greenhouse for herself.
It is lovely.
It's
I thought you were about to say she's bought a deep fat fryer.
No, I'll never buy that.
She bought the teeniest, tiniest little greenhouse, but it's really like a cold frame, but she could stand up in it, and it's 2x4, and it's so tiny, isn't it? But it's got everything you could possibly need in it. It's got a bench in it, it's got opening louver windows at the back, and it's got an auto window.
Where's this?
It's been built.
Oh, it's been built now.
We've taken it down.
Yeah,
We've just got to
dismantled it in no time, didn't we?
Yeah.
But it is beautiful, so we can put that out in a bit when we've done it. We'll probably do it next week.
Yeah.
Anyway, then we can put more salad crops in there, can't we?
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Anyway, never mind that. Who's on about healthy eating? There's chocolate to be had here.
Yeah. So what we're going to talk about next time?
Well, I thought it was about time that we start. I know that you've already mentioned it, but let's start looking at courgettes, squashes, pumpkins, and muck heaps. Yes, because that's where we've had some of our greatest success for growing things. Yes. So let's do that.
The Plotcast podcast with the Potty Plotters is an Amberland Media production.